Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. I've been doing a daily countdown of my 366 favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 42 is Pokemon Gold and Silver. We're in the home stretch regarding Pokemon, and I'm very excited to talk about Gen 2 today. Well, I played an amount of Pokemon Red, which I had ranked as my 55th favorite game before playing Pokemon Gold, which was the one I played for this generation. I was only 4 years old when that released in North America, and I didn't actually beat that game until after I had beaten Gold, so the second generation definitely holds a special place in my heart. Compared to the first games, everything is bigger, and almost everything is better. I think the original is, of course, timeless, and certain things about the story will never feel dated to me, but generally speaking, the second generation is just a step up in every single way. For starters, there's a whole new slew of Pokemon. I'm not going to get into all of the details here because, as I've done with every mainline Pokemon game, I've ranked. There is a separate companion video linked in the description where I just talk a whole lot about every new Pokemon introduced with these games, ranking them as well. So if you want to know how Totodile stacks up against Murkrow, for example, you can find that there. But the short version is that I really like a lot of the new Pokemon in these games, and there's only a few I actively dislike. On the whole, the names and designs feel much more creative than the vast majority of the first generation, distancing itself from just being based entirely, almost, on existing animals and into more fantasy inspirations. There's also more representation of Pokemon doing things within society rather than just being animals that live there, which is always great to see. I generally assume that most people watching these older Pokemon videos know how these games work, but just in case you're somehow not, here's a very quick rundown. You live in a world of adventure and adorable little monsters called Pokemon, which you could tame and battle with against other traders. Pokemon have different types such as fire, water, fighting, grass, poison, and so on, and can learn up to 4 attacks at a time. Many but not all attacks do damage and have their own typings, and the damage is in part determined by the type of the attack and the type of the Pokemon. For example, Flamethrower, a fire attack, is super effective against grass Pokemon, but not very effective against water Pokemon. As you capture more of your own Pokemon, you train them and level them up, causing them to evolve into bigger, stronger versions of themselves and take on a series of increasingly difficult gym battles, culminating in challenging the Elite Four and overall champion of the region, becoming such yourself. Along the way, you become engrossed in a conflict of a larger scale and wind up saving the region from some terrible trouble. The end. So, what makes Gen 2 so good? A lot of the things, it turns out. I'll start with the things it added, and there's an insane amount of them. First, it introduced Dark and Steel-type Pokemon, fleshing out parts of the world, and also creating solutions to a ton of type matchup issues, like how hard it was to deal with Ghost Pokemon, which are now far more plentiful compared to just the Gengar line. While neither are exactly my favorite typings, there's definitely cool Pokemon that come from both, and it was a great addition, both mechanically and thematically. But that's just the start. Adding a night and day cycle is awesome, and not every game has actually done that, but it's great when they do. And it allows for some really great things, like the timings for evolving Eevee into Espeon and Umbreon, for example. There's new battle elements, notably including the ability to hold items, also introducing mainstay items like berries into the franchise. The berries in particular also make good use of the real-time clock, letting your berry trees grow more or less in real time, which was mind-blowing to me as a 6-year-old. Loads of other staple mechanics were added as well, like breeding, more customization options for moves, ways you can battle trainers again, and in this game sometimes they're even stronger than before, and legendaries that require more of a hunt than just navigating to the spot they're waiting for you. But none have been so impactful or cool is the addition of shiny Pokemon. Having alternate color variations to really flex on your friends is amazing, and these debut games for the feature still have many of my favorite variations. Green Espeon is incredible, and Blue Miltank makes me hopeful for a Star Wars crossover of some kind eventually. All of this is great, but there are also things that all of the games after Gold and Silver generally have continued to do. So what puts this above so many of the other titles? Simply put, it's the things they don't. This is the first time that the story of back-to-back games are actually at least somewhat connected. Most games in the franchise feel like they could be occurring at any point in a greater timeline with no sense of connection at all, with the exception of Gen 5, of course, being the only one with a real direct story sequel. This is kind of it. The antagonist team for Gold and Silver are still Team Rocket from the first games, actually, but it's after Giovanni has abandoned the team and the remnants are fractured. As the player, you break the final support columns of their whole organization, disbanding Team Rocket for good. But this is only part of the story. You'll make your way through the Johto gyms, which actually are pretty great and filled with fun challenges. Like, who can forget Whitney's Miltank from Hell? The whole game is absolutely smooth sailing up until that point, and if you're not prepared for the hardest hitting rollout of your life, you're gonna have a bad time. After that, you'll face the Elite Four, which has one very cool element to it. Koga's there. He's one of the gym leaders from the first games, but this is the next hint at how things in the world have changed in the time since those titles happened. It's super awesome facing off with him again, but that's not the last you'll see of Kanto. In fact, you'll see Kanto. After becoming league champion, you head over to the first region and blitz through their whole gym challenge. It's real fast. So you can come face to face with Red, the canonical main protagonist of the first games. This is the craziest fight in any story of the franchise, featuring a level 81 Pikachu amongst other high-level threats. Pokemon Gold and Silver are so special because they almost feel like a love letter to themselves, while pushing the boundaries of what a Pokemon game could be in some pretty massive ways. It also paid tons of respect to the first generation and really to the Game Boy Color overall. Shiny Pokemon made wide use of the full color range capable on the system's display, including a story-related shiny in the form of the Red Gyarados, which is still one of the coolest things to ever happen in the franchise. Even the world design is one of the most colorful of all of them, continuing the trend from the first games of the towns being named after different colors, but this time giving each city unique colored roofs on all of the buildings, tied to, of course, the city's name. The Pokemon Movie 2000 is still my favorite Pokemon movie, and the way it showcased the new Pokemon for the first time was mind-blowing, which actually mirrors my reactions to basically everything these games did at that time. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 41st favorite game, where I am ruthlessly murdered by a flock of chickens.